to a Digital Ship webinar. In today's webinar, we invite you to think, should maritime industry have proactive safety alerting? Our guest speaker is Peter Broadhurst, Senior Vice President, Safety and Security Services with Inmarsat, who will shortly share his thoughts, and then we'll have enough time for you to engage in the discussion and ask your questions. This webinar is sponsored by Inmarsat, and we are starting the webinar with a welcoming introduction and a bit of food for thought from Carl Jeffrey, founding editor of Digital Ship.
Okay, thank you. So what we're going to talk about today is the idea that the shipping industry can have proactive safety alerting. So I'll just explain what that is. Ships can send alerts that are triggered by the crew, GMDSS alerts, but they could also be configured to send automatic alerts. So airlines send automatic alerts in different scenarios. For example, if a pilot changes the hydraulic system, they automatically inform the air traffic control. So the question is whether ships should do automated safety alerting. So we thought of scenarios if a vessel is listing quite far enough and it looks like the cargo is shifted, or if we think the steering gear has failed or the cargo hold doors aren't closing, perhaps that's a good time to send a proactive, which means automated alert. Or there's some more contentious ideas. So we could have automated alerts going to the office if a ship deviates from a planned course like the Costa Concordia did, or it could be alerting charterers if it's using more fuel or emitting more carbon dioxide than it's planned. So there's a lot of complicated issues here. As some people will say, automated safety alerting isn't going to be much help if you think the best people who can deal with most problems are the crew, and they're the best position to know if they want external help or not. And it's not very helpful to wake up the office staff at 3 o'clock in the morning and they might be a false alarm, and it might not be something they can do anything about anyway. But on the other hand, this technology is available today to do automated reporting. It's getting cheaper and cheaper, and it may not be the shipping company that drives this. It may be insurers, it may be charterers that say, look, we know it's possible to do this. We'd like the information. We'd like you to have the information. These are scenarios where we want you to get a report. So these are all things to think about. Another issue is the voyage data recorder. We've got data being recorded on that, but it's been much more useful to have that on the shore. We don't need all of it, but we're going to want some of it. So our speaker today is Peter Broadhurst, who's the Maritime Senior Vice President for Safety, Security, Yachting and Passenger within Inmarsat. He's going to share his ideas about the subject, and he's also going to talk about a trial that Inmarsat's been doing with the LPG carrier Coral Pearl to do automated reporting, including communicating some of the voyage data recorder data. Now, we'd like to present this as a discussion. It's not like a sort of, this is definitely a good idea. You know, people have different views about what exactly ought to be sent and where it ought to be sent. And so we're very keen to get the discussion going. So you can put your ideas with the Q&A. We may try and bring some people into the discussion orally. So if you want to use the raise your hand button, then that tells us we can turn your microphone on and bring you into the discussion later. Or maybe we can set up a sort of discussion group after this event to talk about it, a lot more of shipping safety experts. What exactly would a shipping company really want to have sent? So I think hopefully that starts things going. I'd like to invite Peter to give the opening talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carl. I'll just share my screen. There we go. There we go. Can we all see that?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, thank you very much, Carl, for setting the scene. It seems like you've told everybody what I'm going to do, and now I'm the punch bag, and they're all going to shout at me. So when I explain some novel techniques, I've been with Inmarsat for 7 years, and for the last 5 of them, I've been in looking after safety, and recently we added security on top of that, as we see security and safety is very much aligned. I'm an ex-radio officer. I was replaced by automation, GMDSS, although actually I got out before that. I was married, children resigned, which does show my age, unfortunately. So today I've got a bit of an update on some of the things around the current safety, and then I've got a little bit of a novel technique, which Carl kind of explained, where we are doing a proof of concept around what we think the future role of safety could be, As Carl mentioned, I'm really looking for a lot of feedback on that from everybody, because this is it's change. As I say, it's a novel technique. So let's kick it off and see where we end up, because we should give some good interaction, I think. So first of all, I'd just like to tell you about a report that we've done. We've created this maritime safety report based on our GMDSS data for the last 3 years. We've been measuring the number of ships making up the global fleet against the number of distresses calls that have been recorded by ourselves, and over the same period, so for that 3-year period of data. We'll release this in June, so we're very much close to having it finalised. During the time of the report, the commercial shipping fleet grew by about 4%, leading to a total fleet of 98,140 commercial ships of above 100 gross tons, because we take distress not just from SOLAS vessels, but also from non-SOLAS vessels. The report highlights an average of around 800 distresses per month, per annum. But these are influenced by certain factors, and the factors are highlighted there on the slide. Some vessels we don't have the full details for, as distress is sent, mainly in the non-SOLAS area, where it's a fishing vessel. We don't have the full details of the fishing vessel, or a leisure vessel, or some other maritime surface vessel that's not in IMO class. We have had some impact of COVID. We saw that in 2020. This is highlighted in the report. Some of the other things that are highlighted against the data we've used are the kind of, the exhausted crew, the factors there, and some of the certification delays and extensions. So we tried to kind of cover it all. These numbers do not distinguish between accidental or false alarms, or include near misses, but they are all related to distress that's been initiated by the vessel. And for clarification, so that we all understand, the Maritime SAR Convention defines the distress phase as a situation wherein there is reasonable certainty that a person, a vessel, or other craft is threatened by grave and imminent danger and requires immediate assistance. So having all of that data and cross-referencing it, we have been able to, with these graphs, which are just a kind of a little bit of snapshot from the report, we can break it down by vessel type, by flags, which shipyard was built in, the age of the vessel, the area of operation. The report is quite comprehensive and covers all vessels. So fishing, offshore, and passengers, as I mentioned, are represented as well as merchant marine. And then merchant marine is broken down by type. So we have tankers, container, bulkers, etc. I don't want to spoil the report, as we'll be releasing this early in June, and it will be free to download. It has some interesting insight, and I think it is a start towards more transparency, which I think our industry needs around the safety aspect of vessels, and sending a distress is obviously one part of it. The report also includes opinion pieces for some of the industry's most respected leaders, as you can see there, highlighted as to each one of those. They gave their own perspective. And they're all highlighting that seafarers should be at the core of the shipping's future, and need for a more collective, collaborative approach to maritime safety, with the use of supporting technology to address and reduce risk and prevent accidents happening. There is a lot more to be done in the area of safety, and it's not just GMDSS or communications, but transparency and openness is essential if we're going to tackle this serious issue and support the seafarer of the future. There are many references to the human element and the human factor in the report, and whilst this has always been important, the recent events has made this even more essential. So the report is not just a bunch of statistics, it has a focus in many areas. So enough on this teaser of the report, let's kind of get down to where we're going, but look out for that report. So I want to set the scene around what's happened in the past. The report highlights some recent incidents, such as the Stolt Grunland, the Trung Thao, the MT New Diamond, and Hogasaka, as well as references to piracy and also to political incidents that have occurred. However, let's just take a little time to focus on this, which is well documented in a public report associated with the El Faro, where 33 seafarers lost their lives and the damages were estimated at 36 million. The report shows that hours ahead of the abandonment of the vessel, things were occurring. So prior to this, the area and route of the hurricane was sent and received by the vessel on numerous occasions. It's not just a one-off, it was a long time. There was some talk about should they have changed course from the audio from the VDR on board. However, they continued. Flooding did occur in the cargo hold. It occurred because of the undetected watertight doors were leaking and for other issues. The vessel took on a constant list, and these are all documented in the report. And there was a loss of propulsion due to the low lube oil. There was unsecured ventilation closures, and eventually they lost the radar as well. So as you can see, they did send a distress from an Inmarsat Sea terminal by GMDSS. But by the time they sent the distress, there was 26 minutes to their vessel sinking. I'm not saying that notifying anyone of the issues would have prevented the fate of the vessel, but it could have saved time and it could have saved lives. I don't want to point any blame at anyone particular, especially the seafarers, including the captain who signed on this vessel. However, I think there's much more we can do to ensure that this is not repeated. The executive summary states that the probable cause of the sinking was the captain's insufficient action to avoid the hurricane, failure to use the weather information, and his late decision to muster the crew, along with contributing factors. Again, I don't want to dwell on what the executive summary, seafarers, I think, get a lot of bad press, but I think we have the capability with technology to be able to support the captain and the crew far better than we do today in terms of our proactiveness. As you know, we gained approval for fleet safety, our new GMDSS service, and this slide just shows the latest trial vessel for our fleet safety service, which we've now had fully approved and all the documentation, including the manuals and training materials, in place. We now have the human element to reinforce, as no seafarers is trained on our new safety service, which I find incredible that we can actually get approval for a safety service before we actually train anybody on it. But we are starting this now so we can be aligned with our release of the service later this year. However, fleet safety is a new service based on 30-year-old standards with a few tweaks, but it's still reactive. The IMO is undertaking the modernisation of GMDSS, and I'm not out to bash the IMO. However, this is just to clean up the existing standards, and the basis of GMDSS will be aligned with what we had 30 years ago when we started to do GMDSS. Yes, vessels can send safety, urgency messages, but these are very few compared to distress. Generally, things progress quickly in emergency situations, and the time is critical. What I'm about to show is how digitalisation can play a part in raising the bar of safety. And we will continue with our fleet safety service. We have to work within the confines of the regulations and what's set at this moment in time. But I think we should also be at the same time trying to look what extra we can do. So as Carl alluded to at the beginning, we have conducting a proof of concept with two valued partners, Danilek, a leader in shipborne data infrastructures, and in this case, the VDR on board, and Anthony Vader, a leading transporter of liquefied gas, and who is focused on the transition to a more sustainable world. We've installed Fleet Express, which, as you're aware, is a combination of our L-band BGAN network and our Ka-band GX network, and provided fleet data services for the transfer of vessel data to shore, to the cloud from the vessel, and with simple integration have created a proof of concept service which we call Fleet Data Automated Safety. Simply, we have connected the VDR to our Fleet Express system using the vessel remote server interface. And we can use this data to trigger secondary bandwidth, as in our fleet service our service fleet data, and transfer the full VDR data to the cloud for anyone to access via APIs. Now, you may not want the full VDR in the cloud, but for our proof of concept, we are just looking at what we possibly can do. The interface can also take inputs from other sensors, not necessarily connected to the VDR, or actually can be connected as optional sensors into the VDR. But this means we can monitor the vessel's performance at any time and have a situational awareness from the vessel's perspective. Using very simple or complex or even dynamic logic, the data from the sensors can indicate a problem and notify shoreside support in real time. If we're going to move to maritime autonomous surface ships, MASS, or if the trend of reducing crewing continues, then this type of automated support for onboard the vessel is going to have to be developed anyway. Bringing back data from a vessel is nothing new. Using it on board or even ashore to trigger secondary bandwidth and take additional data is the concept we have added. So this is something we can do today. This is not that we have to spend lots of money to develop this in terms of the actual solution on board the vessel. It's more about how we can integrate this with a shoreside infrastructure that would want to know about what's going on, be that a rescue coordination center, an environmental agency, marine accident investigation bureau, whatever, could all have access to this data. So this is standard fleet data service and the tags from a data source in the cloud. From the Coral Pearl, which is the vessel we're doing the proof of concept on. This can be tailored to a number of sensors required, but the basic system that we offer is as just eight tags. They are free with the Fleet Express service, so you can get this service for free if you have Fleet Express. In this case, we have the speed through the water, depth below the transducer, headed, wind speed relative, wind direction relative, and engine RPM. This is quite straightforward, and you can add extra tags as required. It is mainly part of a commercial offering for remote tracking and performance monitoring for ship owners, managers, charters, insurance, etc. Using these data points, you can build dashboards or use analytics to support vessel monitoring, voyage planning, etc. In the case of the Coral Pearl, we use one of these data tags to trigger the secondary bandwidth and download the VDR. That's the difference for Fleet Data Automated Safety. We can also manually trigger the VDR download to view what is going on at any time. This will show all the sensor inputs, the radar, ECDISC, and audio from the bridge. In fact, everything that is being saved into the VDR, we can have it in real time, or we can download historical data as required. We can also prioritize the data in the network if required, like we do for distress, urgency, and safety data. We can transfer all or predefined data against trigger points. And for the proof of concept, we have used a number of different bandwidths. We've used 2 megabits per second and 1 megabit per second for the secondary pipe to transfer the data. But we have full control of this along with the priority in our network. The view on the right-hand side is the VDR playback GUI for the Coral Pearl. Along the top, you have the tabs where you can pull up ECDISC or radar 1 or radar 2, and you can mute or turn on audio. And also there's the capability with the historical data. You can start and play back at a specific time, or you can pause as required to see what's going on at any one time. As you can say, as it says in the slide, in the case of anomaly, all the data can be transferred. We don't have to do all of that. If we can transfer just certain types of bandwidth, and we can make data, and we can also make data individually available, so you don't have to share everything with everybody. We know that data management is or ownership is going to be a big thing in the future. But in terms of from a safety perspective, and that's what I'm looking at now, the more data you've got and the more situational awareness that you have at the time can really support that. And so I think it's in the interest of everybody to be able to kind of share that data. Here we can see the AIS targets from the vessel. We can move in and out of range as we can on the radar or in the AIS or in the ECDIS without affecting the vessel's display because we have the raw data. And in this case, identify the vessels close by. By selecting an AIS target, it will bring up all the details of that vessel, including the ability to contact the vessel to offer assistance if needed. This gives a true situational awareness from the vessel's perspective. It allows rescue coordination centres to contact the most appropriate vessel, because the one that's closest may not be the most appropriate vessel, for observation or intervention. It also allows them to monitor and support whilst the vessel has power, where you can still get this data back. So this gives us the capability to do a number of things. And these, in the proof of concept, we're looking at everything where we think that we can use data to really assist certain incidents as they occur. Excuse me. So this is the kind of true value of what I want to demonstrate, and it's the use of the digital data to trigger situational awareness. Using the sensor data and simple logic, or even complex artificial intelligence, it is possible to trigger the download of the VDR to view data from the vessel. The data is in the cloud, as I said, and so it can be stored or viewed at the operator's request. The left screen here shows the normal state of fleet data automated safety. And on the right-hand side, we have an emergency situation where a sensor has exceeded the preset parameter. That preset parameter can, as I say, be fixed, or it can be dynamic. It can be based on the situation of where the vessel is, or so, because we have the capability to create the logic on board, or even shoreside now, because the data is coming back to the shore. The alarm can transfer data, it can sound on the vessel, it can send an email, or it can be incorporated into our rescue net. This is a service where we share all of the data with the rescue coordination centres that we have for our GMDSS service. There you can identify the parameter that has been exceeded, so you can see from that that burst initial alarm what has gone. So you can see whether a vessel has is listing, for example, or is in too shallow water, all those kind of concepts that we're using the sensors to trigger. It can aid decision making on board, as well as gain support from ashore. Before you all ask me, I'm very aware of alarm fatigue. I'm not proposing to add more alarms or create more confusion on the bridge in emergency situations. I think there's far too much going on in those situations as it is. So again, this is something that we're very, very aware of. We're not trying to overburden anybody with additional alarms. But we are, in all fairness, in some circumstances, we don't even need to have the alarm on board the vessel as long as shoreside entities are included. So these are a few of the use cases we have been experimenting with. The logic could be on board or shoreside, as I said, but on board is best for time critical events. These are examples, and probably not good examples, because we're, at the heart of a communications company. I have a little bit of background in seafaring, and I've been on vessels that have been on fire, and also ones that have been flooded. I've been away in a lifeboat to save other people in circumstances. So I've got some background, but we are really, demonstrating this as a proof of concept and to see where it should go. And so that's why we're asking for feedback, and that's why I'm very grateful for Digitalisation to allow us to have this platform to show some of these capabilities. These, as I say, not necessarily great examples, but they do show what is possible. Note also that on the Coral Pearl itself, whilst we have the full cooperation of the owner and the crew, we are not asking them to put the vessel in danger in any way to simulate this scenario. We're not asking them to do anything other than they would normally do, or we have not any control over any of the equipment on board the vessel. The principle of using sensors or actions to notify third parties is not new. It's part of the GAD system, the Global Aviation Distress and Safety System, which again Carl alluded to at the beginning, where anomalies are reported, and air traffic control in that circumstances takes extra caution with those vessels, with those airlines. And I know, again, before anybody kind of blows me down, I fully understand that maritime is not aviation, and they are both different in their outlook. But there are principles to be learned that we could adopt to support a better safety record. And obviously, Inmarsat runs not just maritime safety, but also aviation safety. So if we can learn from best practices, then it'll be really good to put that in place. As you can see here, I've just got some examples of the simple logic. One of them is if speed accelerates. If the vessel decelerates quicker than it possibly can, then something has gone wrong. It's something, or it's grounded, or whatever. Again, this is not a situation that may lead to a distress. It's an anomaly. It's not right, and it should be reported, and somebody should be aware of it. And again, in the essence of transparency, this is kind of thing that we need. And again, if inclination is greater than z degrees for so many x seconds, if the vessel is listed and staying in the list, then somebody should be aware of that. Again, it may not lead to a distress situation, and the crew are going to be doing everything they can to rebalance that vessel and to bring it into wind, or whatever they're necessary to do, try and contain it. And then so they should do. And I'm not trying to change that, or I'm trying to change the role of the master. What I am saying is it would perhaps be good that at that point somebody is aware of it. Somebody can ask vessels around to be aware of it, to report back the situation, and to give support in those at that time, if necessary. The complex logic is again a very simple one. We're looking at a number of different ones where, again, vessel has no steerage. It could be easily reported. Again, if you're in the middle of the ocean, you've got no steerage, it's perhaps not too necessary. But if you're in a busy channel or an area like that, then yeah, the level of severity could rise, and the risk associated with it. The one that we're really truly interested in is the dynamic logic, and this one could have been quite a significant one, I think, for the El Faro. Reporting a hurricane and the path of the hurricane is like saying you are on track with this. It's got a closest point of approach, a time to closest point of approach, and if it was a solid island or a ship or something like that, you would have avoided it. Setting up exclusion zones is not new. There are many exclusion zones today, and setting up exclusion zones for vessels could have been very proactive in supporting them around effectively, yes, you can go there if you want to, but no, actually we don't want you to go there. Let's stop you going there. It's a little bit like the government with their COVID rules and the rules that they're saying which country you can visit now, or the green, amber and reds. We could have the same sort of system. So that's where we go, and we're going to continue the proof of concept with the Coral Pearl. We have also had other interested parties that want to kind of support this. So we're trying to build on it. I've done a presentation to the to IMSO, who audit our safety services and their members, and I intend to do a little bit of this around with the IMO. But again, yeah, I'm really interested in feedback as to the direction that we're taking and whether you think it's right or whether it's wrong, or what's the barriers we're going to have to overcome. So yeah, be very interested for any questions or feedback. So Inmarsat, just as a kind of a kind of little short wrap up, Inmarsat is not just looking at safety. There are other pillars that we believe need innovation, and that innovation doesn't need to be too complex. We understand, you know, this is a very conservative industry. It doesn't change very fast, but it's here. Digitalisation is playing a role today, and it is moving forward. None of these pillars should be a surprise to you, to be quite honest. They are the predominant themes in our industry today, and we are looking at where digitalisation can support all of these. There's also a pillar there around digitalisation, because there is a little bit of a fragmentation around how digitalisation could come. The IMO is trying to put standards in for data exchange, which I think is a good way to move forward in terms of how we control that data in the future. It's definitely something that's going to grow, whether that's in the commercial area or in the safety aspects of it. But I think there's a true amount of value that could be done there. And of course, crew. I've said this many times, and it's a personal opinion. People make an industry, it's not technology. The technology supports people. Seafarers are going to be as much a part of maritime industry for as long as I can see, and their valued contribution needs to be supported as best we possibly can. But it's supported, and that's whether that's through retention and training and education, but also obviously now as we saw through COVID, the well-being of seafarers. And I fully understand that not all shipping companies are the same, but as an industry, we need to make sure that we really do support that crew going forward. As part of that, again, another research that we did, and this one is available, it's open now. It was done with Lloyd's List. It's called Digitalisation Uncovered. It's free to download and is on our website. I believe that Digital Ship will be distributing these slides, and you can download it using the QR code if you don't want to go to inmarsat.com and search for it. It has some interesting information on startups. That's, to me, that's where, you know, a lot of this new innovation is going to come from, and the areas that they're working in. This has been a great industry for me, and I think it's a very exciting time, albeit challenging, that's for sure, for the future. But remember, success is not that we don't have any problems, it's that we have better problems, and that's what we're trying to drive and develop forward. So this gives some insight into the key drivers of digitalisation in industry and where we're going, and Inmarsat is there to try and facilitate them. That, I think, is my slides. Hopefully I have taken up just about the right amount of time. I thank everybody for their attendance, and obviously again for Digital Ship facilitating this. I hope you can see the direction that Inmarsat is going with respect to safety, and I respect any feedback you may have, positive or negative. And we can do that now, or if you don't like the open forum, you can contact me directly, Peter Broadhurst at inmarsat.com. Thank you. So Carl, back to you. Let's see if we've had any questions.
Well, thank you very much. Well, that's very interesting. So we'd like to hear from the audience, particularly people who work in shipping companies or have worked in shipping companies. The question is this something you'd want, or have you got reasons for not wanting this, or is there reasons why you think somebody else might want this? So we've tried to line up Egbert Pitt, who's a senior technical superintendent electro with Van Oord. I don't know, Egbert, are you able to talk now? Yeah, should be on. Oh, yeah, it says muted on ours. If you can unmute it. That's I'm muted now. You should be able to speak now, Egbert.
Yeah, hello.
Very good.
I have a question about the Privacy Act of the in how it is acting in European and local governments in privacy of the seafarers.
Yes, it's data ownership and
Yeah.
sharing of data is a very controversial, I would say, but it's mainly for the commercial aspects of it. So, for example, we still today we still have to go through this process. If a vessel contacts us, or so if a ship owner contacts us and says, "My vessel is in trouble, can you give me the position of my vessel?" Now, Inmarsat has all the positions of the vessels. We have to effectively go to the provider of that service and ask them for permission. So we have to get the permission down the chain of everybody that's involved to share that for safety purposes. And now that, because it's for safety purposes, we have never ever had that revoked or stopped. But if, for example, an insurance company or somebody came to us and said, "I would like the position of this vessel," then we need all of those approvals before we can do that. So from a safety aspect, it makes sense to share data. It's when it comes to a commercial aspect that I think we will have the problems. And again, you need to have all of the people who are involved with the data. For example, an engine monitoring system, the data on there, does it belong to the engine manufacturer, or does it belong to the ship owner, or does it belong to the charterer because he's using those engines for that specific? You need to have those permissions to be able to say you can share it or do what you want with it. So Data Protection Act has made it clearer, but more complicated to get that approval.
If you see in safety and in accidents, then it is no issue. But if you on a day-to-day basis you have the audio of the bridge, then you have troubles coming up your way.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
And is it a Danalek installation VDR mandatory, or is it also independent on that one?
So on this vessel, it is a Danalek. It's the principle of this is it would not be confined to one VDR manufacturer. That's we understand that we're not out to create monopolies in the world in that respect. Vessels are built with the sensors and an IT infrastructure for what is best for them and where they bring it back to, and the collection of data wouldn't necessarily have to be the VDR. It just makes sense today that it is the VDR because that's where all of the data points are coming to.
Oh, cheers. Oh, that's great. We've got two questions from Satcom Electronics Company. So Bruce Johnson from NSSL, he's asking basically about if you can link this with maintenance systems, which I think maybe you wouldn't want to do because you want to have it safety as a thing on its own. And then Martin van Uggelen is asking if ship owners choose whether or not they're going to do this or not, how can it help rescue centres to improve their support services because they need some kind of consistency, I suppose. That's my interpretation of what they're asking.
Yeah, so the first question obviously is the commercial aspect of it, and that's not new. Bringing data back to support a return on investment in terms of preventive maintenance and things like that is truly possible, and is something that's being developed by a number of the people in the industry, like I said, the startups and mature companies. So. I think that will develop. Whether it will ever get standardized because it's commercial, I'm not quite sure. On the sorry, on the second question was the safety aspect of it was.
Well, he's saying if this is a voluntary service, so the ship owner has to choose to do this. So how can it contribute to the way that rescue centres can manage their support services? I guess if only some shipping companies agree to do it.
Yeah. So part of this proof of concept is again. We are engaging with rescue coordination centres because a rescue coordination centre would not want a full data from the VDR. The guy who's running the rescue coordination centre probably would not want a radar image or those. He just probably, it's too much information, and he's not trained in that, so it doesn't really help him in any aspect. And also having the AIS positions as they are represented in the GUI player may help him, because you can visually see which vessel is closest at that. But could they scroll in and out of range and things like that? So we don't want to overburden the Rescue Coordination Centre with too much data. We want to make sure that what we give him is the most appropriate and concise data that would support specific scenarios. So that's what we're trying to work with them on in terms of this proof of concept.
Oh, very good. So we have a hand raised from Darius Stefaniak, who's a crewing manager with SMT Shipping in Gdansk. Darius, you able to speak if we bring you into the session? Oh, there you're coming up. It says you're muted at the moment.
How do you read me?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, I am from crewing department, but I have some questions which will be useful for my colleague superintendents. The first of all is regarding the main engine and auxiliary engines. I saw on the graphs that there is possible to send the information about the failure of main engine or auxiliary engine, and is it possible to send also the data, like for example temperature of the units or something like that, which can be exceeded, and just to avoid the failure, yeah, to alert the superintendent that, hey chief, draw your attention on something, yeah, then do it quickly before the engine will be sized. And the same concerns like SO2 emission or oily water if anything is exceeded. So how it will work? And the other question, how can we ask for the cost? Because I think that you will not say about it during this meeting, but how can we contact regarding this?
Okay. So the most of the aspects you're talking about are the commercial aspects of it. So it's down, again, I said, to preventive maintenance or a return on investment in terms of looking after your assets or your machinery in this case. If there are sensors there, then then you can use any sensor. So if you've got your temperature sensors or you've got any kind of feedback, cyclic torque, or all that, your oily mist detectors, whatever it is, you can use that. And in the remote server on board the vessel, you can set a trigger point. So there's no reason why you could say, right, okay, I don't need the engine data all the time, but if a bearing temperature gets too high, or if something happens, then I would like you to give me the historical data for the last 2 days or whatever it is, so you can see what's happening and why it's that. So, and you could build your own dashboard, or you could build your own service, or all those kind of things. There's a number of people out there that are supporting that today, and I can put you in touch with those. In terms of purchasing the service, you can contact me, or you can make a request through the Inmarsat site in terms of for fleet data, the service as such. Obviously, you know, what I'm concentrating on here is the safety aspect. Yeah, losing your main engine or your auxiliary engine or propulsion or whatever are, again, areas which we've defined as an emergency. They're not a distress as it's defined. They're not an urgency as such, but it's something that we think maybe somebody should be aware of, and depending where that occurs, the level of risk associated with it can be managed and support given or stood by just in case. That's where we think that we can hopefully save a little bit of time, and hopefully it's the machinery, the vessel itself, and then people eventually. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question.
Oh, so we've got a question from Captain Harry Verhoeven, who's from Kongsberg Maritime, Dynamic Positioning Product Advisor in Maritime Operations. He's asking if we can issue dedicated warnings to vessels sailing into a typhoon, but we were not really talking about warnings to vessels, we're talking about warnings to the officer here. So I don't know how, there's a bit of a misunderstanding.
Well, this is an interesting one because today typhoon warnings do go out, hurricane warnings go out. In the case of the El Faro, they go out. They say, you know, in this case, it's the maritime safety information from the meteorological office, who is responsible for that area, will issue a warning, and they will issue a warning depending on the speed of the and the ferocity of the storm. They will update them, so it could be 30 minutes, could be 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever, and they try to predict where the storm is going and the speed at which it's going. So all of that is pushed to the vessel, and the vessel does receive it. We do that as a broadcast, and it's our job to ensure that happens as Inmarsat. So that's what we do. The vessel receives it, but then it's down to the vessel to interpret that and to make its own value judgment about, you know, where they should go. As I say, I've been on a ship. I was on a cruise ship, and we used to have to run away from hurricanes because our cargo people weren't too happy when they were being thrown around, sort of thing. So, and if you're on a vessel that can do 16 knots, but a hurricane's doing 20 knots, and you are in, you know, you've got to be very, very on top of that as to what it does. But setting an exclusion zone or pushing an exclusion zone to a vessel, I think, is something where we can take a stronger role and say, sorry, you cannot enter this area. You know, you need to avoid it whilst the storm passes. Just from a prudence, it's the same as what air traffic control do effectively with the Gulf Stream. They route traffic on the Gulf Stream to increase their speed across the Atlantic or the Pacific and the likes. They will also do it to avoid the nasty bouncy air that we don't like. So I think we can go a little bit further in terms of how we do that. And also there's a role for data to play in feeding back the weather information from all these ships. So every ship is a meteorological station, effectively. And as I showed there, we have relative wind speed and we have relative wind direction. The meteorological offices would love that from every vessel that's out there. And the overall cost of bringing back that data on a regular basis in the grand scheme of things for shipping would be negligible. And yet it would really help, not just weather information for maritime, but for weather forecasting for everybody. So there's positives that could be taken from this in terms of the data. Again, hydrographic offices, you know, would love to have the depth readings at a certain point at certain times to give that feedback to analyze against their existing charts and stuff like that. So there is a future where I think digital is going to play a large role, and some of that will be free shared data, which I'm not overly against, and some of it will be paid commercial, specifically return for individual shipping companies to create differentiation and create support for their business models.
There's a follow-up point from Captain Harry. So he's saying that sort of should be seamanship to know how to avoid typhoons and knowledge about the vessel. We're losing ships and crews every year to people making the wrong decisions. I'm not quite sure what the point are. You're saying that people have less skill now than they used to and will benefit from more shore support. I don't know, Harry, if you're welcome to come in on the microphone if you'd like to, if you let me know on the chat. But
I think I can judge Harry's question if he doesn't even want to say it. But 10 years ago you would have had a crew of, I don't know, 35, 40 on a ship, and today you have a crew of 20, if you're lucky, 16, sort of thing. It's still a ship and it's still doing the same thing. Yes, there's been some automation added, etc., from unmanned engine rooms and things like that, but the workload is higher, and the skill level is higher. So we are expecting a lot more from our crew and people, and training, as I said, is really important, the human element and the factor there. And yet it's very easy to say an error was made by an individual or a captain or a crew member or whatever.
We have Captain Harry on the panelists now. Do you want to say we got your question right, Harry? Oh, can't hear. Oh, this is a.
Can you hear me now?
That's better. Yeah.
Okay. Double. Yes. Good morning. I have to say, very interesting presentation, Peter. And I'm also happy to hear in between the lines your experience as a seafarer, which is very good to make these kind of products. My point is this: with all this data which is available, and you have the weather forecast, you have Inmarsat with your system that you've just presented, and I think there is a lack of knowledge about typhoon avoidance. When I went to Maritime High School 40 years ago, there was no Inmarsat, and we were taught basic rules how to determine the center of the typhoon, and which sector not to be in, etc. And I think and I'm not misjudging or questioning the competence of the present day masters, but I think some of the good old seamanship has been lost over time, and I think it would be very useful for the captains if they, based on the weather forecast, based on where they are, the maximum speed with the vessel, etc., that they get an advice, go that direction, maximum speed, get the hell out of there.
Yeah, I agree with you. But there's a lot more pressure on the crew these days, and some of that is down to charterers making sure that ships arrive at certain times, and the whole infrastructure of shipping. Seamanship and competent crew and captains and all that stuff is not something I'm not trying to stop or wouldn't want to stop. I'm trying to aid them in that decision making, and that's what today's information that we send out. We broadcast that message, and it says, there is going to be a typhoon in this area, and it's moving in this direction, and all that, so that they can make their decisions. Overall, whether the competence levels need to be improved or whatever, I think that as I say, training can always be improved, but we tend to focus on when things go wrong, but a lot of times the captains make the right decisions based on the information they are, and that's more than the wrong decisions, that's for sure. So the captain is playing an essential role, or the crew and the officer of the watch are playing an essential role, and they will continue to play that role, and a lot of the accidents are avoided because of the competency of them.
Got Nigel Cleave ready to. So Nigel used to run one of the world's largest ship management companies, but I've forgotten which one it is. But I see it's not mentioned on your LinkedIn page. But no,
I'm a consultant. We're a consultant today, Carl. So what have you? Nice to see you again, Peter. And I think excellent report. No, I actually fly a very modern twin-engine general aviation aircraft, and we are so far ahead in communications, in weather, you name it, compared to the maritime. You'll do it because you deal with it, Peter, but we have so much capability in this aircraft that it makes the maritime side 100 years behind. It really does, I mean, the weather information I get is so accurate today. I can dictate where I should go, where I should fly, but also air traffic controller in contact with me, and via satellite in contact with me, and also ADS-B in and out, know exactly where I am, including traffic collision avoidance and everything. So there's so much that Inmarsat and yourselves can provide, and I just wonder why we're not grasping this situation, because it's there, it's available, and it's really, really incredible, the technology out there that is available to our industry,
Yeah, and it is a struggle. It is a struggle, that's for sure.
Can I, Carl?
Yes, go on.
Between my merchant navy and offshore career, I worked 3 years for KLM Navigation Bureau, and we made everything that the pilot has in his pilot case: charts, standing arrival, standing departure, flight plans, the whole shebang. So I'm very familiar. I'm actually an air navigation specialist by trade as well. And I really support Nigel's decision. And the problem is that immediately when you start talking about these kind of possibilities, then the only question that come up: how much does it cost? and and that really sometimes get me a bit. I've been 40 years at sea, 24 years as captain. And it really annoys me sometimes that is the first and only question.
Yeah.
Last 5 minutes, Peter, so maybe some wrap up comments.
No, I mean, there is a commercial element to this, but from a safety aspect, what is the price of safety? I just think that, and the other thing is scale. If you do this on a one-by-one basis, it's going to cost a lot of money. But if you do it in like the aviation industry, and its scale and it's applied to everybody, then there is an acceptance that that's what's required. I'm sure that Nigel's aeroplane costs a lot of money, but the overall cost of the safety aspects in relation to them to that, because it has to be done at the time, is very small, and that would be the same for shipping. I'm going to build a brand new ship, and the infrastructure for all of this data and whatever and is limited. So I think this can be done. I hope even if we just do a small amount of it, it could improve seafarers' lives and hopefully save some lives, which is ultimately where I'm coming from, and I think that it's a good aid to support seafarers and move the industry into hopefully the 21st century when it comes to digitalisation.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. Well, just to everyone, when you registered, there was a question: are you happy for us to pass the name on to the sponsors? So that's our GDPR permissions to give your names to Peter and the Inmarsat team. So if you're interested in follow-up discussions about how this can work, I'm sure Peter will be very pleased to hear from you. Do you want to take a couple of minutes for a final comment, Peter?
No, the more feedback the better, obviously. This is a proof of concept. It's outside of it's a novel technique, as we said. I'm just trying to show the capabilities. It's a little bit needs refinement into the true value for different aspects of the industry, but the only way that Inmarsat can do that is to work with the industry. So please share your feedback, positive or negative. We've not necessarily got this right first time, and we'll carry on driving in that direction and see what we can come up with.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, it's been lovely to see so many of you in the video for the first time. We should have tried this before, and I shall pass back to Vida for the closing words. Thank you.
So you heard Peter Broadhurst of Inmarsat presenting his idea on safety alerting, also a spontaneous discussion that sparked with participants Nigel, Harry, Darius, and Egbert. Thank you for that. And on Thursday, we invite you to learn about high-frequency radio mesh networks as alternatives to SATCOMs. Sign up at webinars.thedigitalship.com. Carl and I will hopefully see you on Thursday. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.